I never thought one forgotten message could destroy everything. It's strange how something so small, so ordinary, can change your entire life. It was a Sunday morning. The kind of morning that almost feels too peaceful. The sunlight was spilling through the blinds, the smell of fresh coffee filled the kitchen, and the quiet hum of the refrigerator was the only sound between us. My wife, Emily, was sitting across the table, scrolling through her phone, half smiling at something she saw. She had that look people get when they're reading something they shouldn't laugh at but can't help it. "Something funny?" I asked, half awake, my voice still rough from sleep. She looked up, startled, like she didn't expect me to speak. Then she smiled. "Just a meme," she said. "Nothing special." Her voice was calm. Too calm, maybe. But I didn't think about it. Why would I? After 5 years of marriage, you don't question the little things. I got up to grab more coffee. The sound of the spoon stirring against the mug filled the silence. She was already lost back in her phone. I didn't know then, that same phone was about to tear my world apart. Later that morning, she said she had to run to Target. Just a few things for the house. That was normal. Emily loved her little solo errands. Gave her reason to play her favorite podcasts and get some quiet time away from work stress. I stayed home. Cleaned the kitchen. Did the dishes. Folded laundry. Just normal Sunday stuff. When she left, she forgot her phone. I didn't realize it right away, not until it buzzed. It was lying face down on the counter, vibrating softly against the granite. I picked it up without thinking. A name flashed on the screen. One I didn't recognize. D. Just a single letter. No last name. No emoji. No hint. The message preview showed part of a sentence. "Can't stop thinking about last night." My heart stopped. Literally, I felt it in my chest, like someone had grabbed it and squeezed. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. There had to be an explanation. Maybe it was a friend. Maybe it was about something innocent. But no part of me truly believed that. Not after the way she smiled this morning. Not after that flicker of guilt I saw in her eyes when I asked what she was laughing at. I should have left the phone alone. That's what any reasonable person would say, right? Respect privacy. Trust your partner. But trust feels different when you see something that doesn't belong. It becomes a test you can't walk away from. I unlocked her phone. She'd given me her password months ago. "In case of emergencies," she said. I guess this qualified. The message opened. And I started reading. At first, it didn't make sense. The words were vague. Soft. Hidden between jokes and "miss you," as that could be friendly if you squinted hard enough. But then I scrolled up. And up. And my world started to crumble line by line. There were messages going back months. Pictures. Late night. Can't sleep. Texts. Plans to meet. Inside jokes. Memories I wasn't part of. I read things I wish I hadn't. Things no husband should ever have to read. And the worst part wasn't even what she wrote, it was how she wrote it. The tone. The comfort. The care. It was the way she used to talk to me, 5 years ago. That's when I knew. Something was gone. Something I couldn't get back. The front door opened. I froze. "Hey!" she called. "I'm back!" My hands were shaking. I put her phone face down, exactly where she'd left it, and forced myself to act normal. She walked in with grocery bags, humming like nothing was wrong. "Everything okay?" she asked. I nodded. "Yeah, just tired." But she looked at me for a moment too long. Like she sensed something, some shift in the air. Then she smiled again. "You sure?" I smiled back. "Yes," I lied. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those messages. I heard the tone in her laughter. The way she said his name. D. Short, familiar, soft. I tried to convince myself it was just texting. Just emotional. Just loneliness. But deep down I knew. Something real had already happened. At 2:30 a.m., I went downstairs for water. Her phone was charging on the counter again. I stared at it for a long time. And then, I saw a notification light up. Another message. Same contact. Miss you already? I didn't open it. I didn't need to. The words were enough. They were confirmation. Evidence. A wound that didn't need to bleed to hurt. The next morning, she acted normal. Made breakfast. Kissed my cheek. Asked if I wanted coffee. Like nothing had happened. And maybe for her, nothing had. Maybe she thought I'd never know. But once you see something like that, you can't unsee it. You start noticing patterns. The late night calls she takes. For work. The sudden new perfume. The quiet distance between words. It's like living with a stranger wearing your wife's skin. I didn't confront her that day. Or the next. Instead, I watched. Listened. Collected pieces of truth like broken glass, each one cutting me a little deeper. 5 years of marriage. And I had no idea who she really was anymore. I used to think secrets were harmless, just things people keep to protect others. Now I know better. Secrets aren't walls. They're weapons. And she was holding one right next to my heart. I didn't confront her that first day. I wanted to. God knows I did. But something in me said, wait. Watch. Be sure. Because once you cross that line, once you ask the question you already know the answer to, there's no going back. So I stayed quiet. For 3 days. 3 long, heavy days that felt like walking through smoke, seeing shapes but never quite breathing right. She acted normal. Laughed when we watched our shows. Kissed me goodnight. Asked about work. But I couldn't look at her without hearing that message echoing in my head. Can't stop thinking about last night. The words looped in my mind like a song I didn't want to remember. By the 4th day, I started to notice the little things. The way she'd turn her phone face down whenever it buzzed. The way she'd step outside to take calls. The way she avoided eye contact when she thought I was watching her. Small things, but together they built a picture I couldn't unsee. At night when she slept, I'd just lie there, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathing. I wanted to hate her. I really did. But hate's complicated when it's mixed with love. You start wondering if maybe you did something wrong. If maybe you missed something. On Friday, I decided to test her. Nothing dramatic, just a conversation. I asked if she wanted to go out that weekend, maybe dinner, a drive, something to reconnect. She hesitated. Just for a second. Then smiled. Can't this weekend, she said. Rachel's birthday. Girls' night. She looked away too fast after that. Rachel? I repeated. Didn't you go to her birthday in March? Oh no, that was her work thing, she said quickly. This is her actual party. It was such a bad lie. I could almost see her thinking it through, trying to patch the cracks as the words fell apart. I nodded. Okay. Have fun. And she smiled again, relieved maybe. But she didn't notice how still I'd become. That night, after she went to bed, I opened my laptop. I wasn't proud of it, but I needed to know where she was really going. So I downloaded a phone tracker. Something simple. Non-invasive. Just information. I told myself it wasn't spying. It was truth-seeking. But deep down, I knew I was crossing a line, the same line she'd already crossed, just from the other side. I synced the app to her phone while she slept. Her breathing didn't change. She didn't stir. I stood there, in the glow of her charger light, wondering when trust had turned into surveillance. The next evening, she got dressed for her girls' night. New perfume. New dress. The same calm smile. I told her she looked beautiful. She said thank you, kissed my cheek, and left. I watched her drive away from the window. Waited 10 minutes. Then opened the tracker. She wasn't heading downtown. She was driving toward the edge of town, near the old marina. No restaurants there. No bars. Just empty warehouses, a few offices, and one motel. My throat went dry. I watched her little dot stop moving. Right there, behind a cheap, faded motel sign. It felt like someone had punched through my ribs. I sat in silence for a long time. Couldn't move. Couldn't think. The world around me just muted. Then I grabbed my keys. The drive there felt endless. Every red light was an enemy. Every turn was heavier than the last. My hands shook the entire way. I wasn't even sure what I planned to do. Confront her? Catch her in the act? Or just prove what I already knew? When I reached the motel, her car was right there, parked near the side exit, half hidden by a dumpster. The lights were dim. The air smelled like rain and regret. I didn't go inside. I couldn't. Instead, I sat in my car across the street, engine off, just staring. 15 minutes passed. Then 20. Then, she came out. Not alone. A man walked beside her. Tall. Broad shoulders. Laughing quietly as they walked to his truck. She was smiling too, that soft, easy smile she used to have with me. I couldn't breathe. They hugged before she got in her car. Not just a friendly hug. The kind of hug that carries history. She drove off first. He stood there, watching her tail lights fade, before heading the other way. I waited until I was sure she was gone before I drove home. No music. No thoughts. Just silence and headlights cutting through the dark. When she came back 2 hours later, I was sitting in the living room. Lights off. Just waiting. She walked in quietly, surprised to see me awake. "Oh, you're still up?" she asked. Her voice trembled just a bit. "Yeah," I said. "How was Rachel's party?" She hesitated. Then forced a smile. "It was fun. You know Rachel never stops talking." I nodded slowly. The air between us felt like glass, thin, fragile. One wrong word and it would shatter. I wanted to say it. To scream it. To tell her I saw everything. But I didn't. Not yet. Because part of me needed to know how far she'd go with the lie. "Glad you had fun," I said softly. And she smiled again. But this time, it didn't reach her eyes. That night, when she fell asleep beside me, I couldn't look at her. Her breathing was calm, peaceful, like someone who carried no guilt. And I lay there wondering how love can feel so familiar and so foreign at the same time. I knew what I had to do. But not yet. Not until I understood why. Because sometimes the truth hurts less than the reason behind it. And I needed to hear that reason from her lips, no matter how much it broke me. The morning after the so-called girls' night, she was humming in the kitchen. The same melody she always hummed when she felt guilty. I didn't even realize I remembered that, but I did. It was the same tune she hummed the night she dented the car and tried to hide it. She looked up and smiled when she saw me. "Morning, handsome," she said. Like nothing happened. I poured coffee, pretending my hands weren't shaking. She leaned on the counter, scrolling through her phone again. Face down, of course. Always face down. Don't say anything. I told myself. Not yet. Because anger without proof sounds like madness. And I needed her to speak her own guilt aloud. That evening, I suggested we watch a movie together, something light, something to fill the silence. She agreed, curled up beside me on the couch, her head on my shoulder like always. The screen flickered in front of us, but I wasn't watching it. I was watching her. Halfway through, her phone buzzed. She flinched, just slightly, then picked it up. The glow lit her face, soft and blue. She smiled. "Who's that?" I asked quietly. She froze for a fraction of a second. Then, "Oh, Rachel," she said. "She was just sending pictures from last night." A lie. Clear as day. And she didn't even know I could hear the tremor in her voice. She tucked the phone away, leaned back, and rested her head again. Like nothing happened. Like she hadn't just twisted another knife. I didn't move. Didn't speak. I just listened to the hum of the television and her heartbeat against my chest. And all I could think was, how many lies can fit inside one quiet evening? The next few days passed in fragments. Work. Silence. Forced smiles. We talked about groceries, bills, weekend plans. Everything except the thing eating me alive. I started noticing every tiny inconsistency. A receipt in her purse from a restaurant I'd never heard of. Perfume I hadn't bought her. And once, a small bruise on her shoulder she said was from bumping into a shelf. Every word she spoke became evidence. Every silence, an answer she didn't want to give. I wasn't sleeping anymore. At night, I'd sit on the edge of the bed, watching the shadows move across the wall. And sometimes she'd mumble in her sleep, words half-formed, names half-spoken. One night she whispered something that froze me completely. She said, "Don't call me M in front of him." That was our thing. Something private. Something only I called her. I sat there for hours after that, staring into the dark, feeling something inside me finally snap. The next morning, I made a decision. I couldn't live in the dark anymore. But I didn't want to confront her in anger. I wanted her to confess. To see if any part of her was still honest. So that evening, I set the stage. I cooked dinner. Lit candles. Played our old playlist, the one from our wedding night. Everything felt rehearsed, like I was directing a play where she didn't know the script. When she came home, her surprise looked genuine. "Oh wow," she said softly. "What's all this for?" "Just us," I said. "It's been a while." She smiled, but there was fear behind it. I could see it. Like she was waiting for the curtain to drop. We ate mostly in silence. I watched her carefully, every gesture, every pause. Halfway through dinner, her phone buzzed again on the counter. She looked at it, quickly, then back at me. Didn't touch it. Didn't move. Just said, "It's work." Another lie. That was the second one of the night. And she said it without blinking. I nodded slowly. "You should check if it's important." She hesitated. "No, it's fine." Then reached for her wine instead. I kept my eyes on her, steady, calm, unflinching. She looked away first. After dinner, we sat on the porch in silence. The crickets were loud. The sky was the color of burnt orange fading into night. She sipped her wine, staring at nothing. I waited. And then, without looking at me, she said, "You've been quiet lately." "I've had a lot on my mind," I said. She nodded. "Work stuff?" "No," I said. "Us." Her hand froze around the glass. The air went still. "What about us?" she asked softly. I turned to her, and for the first time in weeks, I looked her straight in the eye. "I think you should tell me the truth," I said. "About where you were Friday night." She blinked. Confusion first. Then panic. Then that same calm mask she always wore. "I told you, I was with Rachel." And there it was. The second lie, again. The same words. Same tone. Same lie twice. Something inside me broke quietly. No yelling. No drama. Just the sound of something ending. I stood up. She reached for me. Why are you acting like this? She said. I looked down at her. Because I saw you, I whispered. I saw where you went. And who you were with. Her face went pale. Completely still. For a second, she didn't even breathe. Then she whispered, You followed me? Yes, I said. And you lied? Twice. The silence after that was unbearable. She started crying. Soft, guilty tears. I didn't move. Didn't comfort her. She tried to speak. I didn't mean for it to happen. Stop, I said. Because I couldn't take hearing it. Not yet. She covered her face with her hands. And for the first time, I saw her as someone I didn't recognize. A stranger wearing my wife's voice. That night, she slept on the couch. I lay awake, listening to the distant hum of the refrigerator, the faint rustle of the wind outside. Everything felt heavier, even the air. Somewhere deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. Because betrayal doesn't end with a confession. It begins there. And the worst part was still coming. The part where I'd have to decide what to do with the truth. The next morning, the house felt different. Not quieter, just heavier. Like the walls themselves knew what had happened. She was sitting at the kitchen table, wrapped in her robe, her eyes swollen from crying. A mug of untouched coffee sat in front of her. The same one she'd made every morning for 5 years. Except now, it felt like a prop in a life that no longer fit. Can we talk? She said softly. I wanted to say no. I wanted to walk past her, grab my keys, and leave. But I didn't. Because part of me, the stupid, loyal part, still wanted to hear her side. I sat down across from her. No words at first. Just silence and the faint ticking of the kitchen clock. I never meant to hurt you, she said finally. Her voice was small. Trembling. Like she'd rehearsed it all night. I didn't respond. She kept talking. It just happened. I didn't plan it. I swear. Those words, I didn't plan it. They hit me harder than I expected. Because in them, there was no denial. Just admission. Who is he? I asked quietly. She looked away. The husband of a friend, she whispered. Someone I met at Rachel's office. That detail, the husband of a friend. It broke something deeper than anger could ever touch. It made me realize how casual betrayal can be. How ordinary. How easily it hides in the everyday. Was it serious? I asked. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. Tears slid down her face, but she didn't wipe them away. How long? Almost a year, she said. A year. 12 months of shared lies. Of fake smiles, planned weekends, inside jokes. While I was busy trusting her. I got up. Walked to the sink. Turned on the faucet just to drown the sound of my own breathing. But even through the running water, I could hear her crying. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. Just quiet, broken sobs, the kind that come from realizing you've destroyed the one person who actually loved you. I ended it, she said after a while. Her voice barely above a whisper. 3 weeks ago. I turned off the water and looked at her. Her face was pale, empty. There was no makeup, no mask, just truth, raw and fragile. Why? I asked. Because I couldn't live with it anymore, she said. I kept looking at you, and I hated myself. I wanted to believe her. God, I really did. But something in me had changed. It wasn't hatred. It wasn't even pain. It was distance, cold, quiet distance. You should have hated what you were doing, I said. Not yourself after. She covered her face, crying harder now. I just stood there, feeling like I was watching a stranger fall apart. The day passed slowly. We didn't talk again. She stayed in the bedroom, I stayed in the living room. Every sound, footsteps, doors creaking, water running, felt amplified. Like we were two ghosts haunting the same house. That night, she came to me. Her eyes red, her voice soft. "Can we at least try?" she asked. "Therapy. Time. Something?" I stared at her for a long time. Then I said, "You want time? I gave you 5 years." And I walked out. I didn't go far, just down the street, to the park where we used to walk our dog. The air was cold, sharp against my skin. I sat on the same bench where she once told me she wanted kids. And I realized the woman I loved still existed. Just not here anymore. When I got back, she was asleep on the couch. Her phone lay beside her, screen still lit. One unread message. From a name I didn't recognize. I shouldn't have looked. But I did. "I miss you too." That's all it said. No name, no explanation, just a message that destroyed the last piece of doubt I had left. I set the phone down quietly and walked to the bedroom. For the first time in years, I locked the door. Not to keep her out, but to keep myself from going back. That night I didn't cry. Didn't scream. Didn't break anything. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of her breathing in the next room. And it hit me. This is how love dies. Not with a fight. Not with an ending. But with silence between two people who used to tell each other everything. I woke up to sunlight. It cut through the curtains, soft and golden, the kind of light that should have felt warm. But it didn't. It felt wrong. Too calm. Too peaceful for what was left inside me. The couch was empty when I walked out. Her blanket folded neatly. Her phone gone. The silence felt bigger than the room itself. For a moment, I thought maybe she'd left, really left. And I didn't know whether that thought terrified me or relieved me. Then I saw it. A folded piece of paper on the counter. My name written on it. Just Ben. Nothing else. I stared at it for a long time before picking it up. The handwriting was shaky. The kind you get when you've cried too much to see straight. "I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness. I'll give you space for now. I need to fix myself before I destroy anything else. Please don't hate me. I still love you." It wasn't a goodbye. Not really. Just another piece of half-truth written on lined paper. I placed it down and walked outside. The morning air was cold, sharp, alive. For the first time in weeks, I noticed the sound of birds, the way the wind moved the leaves. The world hadn't stopped, only I had. I sat in my car for almost an hour, not moving. The radio off. Just the ticking of the cooling engine. My phone buzzed twice in the cup holder, both from numbers I didn't know. But one of them caught my attention. It was short. Just 3 words. She told him. No name. No context. Just those 3 words that hit like a second betrayal. I didn't know who it was from, maybe him, maybe someone else, but the meaning was clear enough. Whatever ending it meant, it hadn't really ended. And that message, that was the moment I knew the marriage wasn't broken. It was gone. I didn't call her. Didn't text. Didn't even ask for answers. Instead, I drove. No destination, no plan. Just roads, endless stretches of asphalt under a sky that felt too wide, too open. I passed diners, gas stations, little towns I couldn't name. And somewhere between 2 exits, I realized I was breathing again. It wasn't peace, not yet. But it was something close to freedom. I pulled over near a lake, got out, and stood by the water. The wind was cold, and the surface rippled like glass breaking. For a moment, I thought about throwing my phone in. Just letting it sink. Erase every trace of her, every memory, every digital ghost. But I didn't. Because healing doesn't come from forgetting. It comes from remembering, and choosing not to go back. That night, I checked into a motel. Not far. Just enough distance to breathe. I sat on the bed, scrolling through old photos. Our wedding day, the trip to Oregon, that weekend we got lost and laughed about it. For the first time, I didn't cry. I just watched those versions of us, people who didn't know what was coming, and felt something gentle instead of grief. Maybe that's how healing starts. Not with closure, but with understanding that you can't fix what someone else broke inside themselves. I closed the phone, turned off the light, and whispered, not in anger, but in quiet acceptance, "I forgive you. But I'm done." Outside, the motel sign flickered in the dark. The air smelled like rain and old pavement. I lay back, closed my eyes, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for her to come home. Because this time, I finally was home. Even if it was just me. It had been 2 weeks. 14 days since I walked out. 14 mornings waking up in silence that didn't hurt anymore. I'd gotten used to motel walls, the hum of the air conditioner, the faint smell of detergent and coffee that never quite went away. Routine was my therapy. Wake up. Run. Work. Eat. Sleep. Repeat. But that morning, something different happened. My phone buzzed, an unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. Then I saw the message that came before the call. "It's about Emily." I stared at the screen. Her name still made my chest tighten. Not pain, just memory. The phone buzzed again. I answered this time. Then? It was a man's voice. Older. Calm. "Yes," I said cautiously. "My name's Mark," he said. "I'm Emily's brother." I froze. We met once, years ago, at Thanksgiving. He lived in another state. Barely spoke to anyone. "What happened?" I asked. There was a pause. Then he sighed. "She's in the hospital." The world seemed to blur for a second. I didn't speak. Didn't move. Just listened. "She was in an accident," he continued. "Nothing fatal, but she's asking for you." I didn't know what to say. My throat went dry. All the anger I'd built, it didn't know where to go. Because the person I wanted to hate was suddenly the person I couldn't stop worrying about. "Which hospital?" I asked quietly. 2 hours later, I was driving again. Same highways, same sky, same silence. But everything felt heavier. My chest tight with confusion. When I reached the hospital, I sat in the parking lot for almost 10 minutes, just breathing. Trying to decide if walking through those doors meant weakness or closure. I finally went in. Room 212. She was there. Her face was pale. Small bandage on her forehead. Line in her arm. But when she saw me, her eyes filled instantly. "Ben!" she whispered. Her voice cracked like something fragile that had waited too long to be heard. I stood by the door. Didn't move closer. Didn't say her name back. She smiled weakly. "You came." "I wasn't going to," I said. And that was the truth. She nodded, as if she expected that. "I don't deserve it," she said softly. Then her eyes lowered. "I wanted to see you, because I didn't want the last thing between us to be silence." Those words hit me, harder than I wanted to admit. Because that's exactly what I'd left her with. "I lied," she said suddenly, her voice trembling. "Not just about him. About why." I stayed quiet. Let her speak. "I was lonely," she whispered. "I thought you didn't see me anymore. You stopped talking to me, really talking. Everything felt routine. Empty. And I filled that emptiness with the wrong person." Her words weren't excuses. They were confessions. Raw. Small. Human. "I ruined the best thing I ever had," she said. Tears slipped down her face. I've been trying to live with that. I swallowed hard. The truth was, she wasn't wrong. I had stopped seeing her. I stopped noticing the small things, the quiet ways she reached out. And in that space, someone else had found her. But still, betrayal is a choice. And forgiveness isn't forgetting. She reached out her hand slightly. Not a plea. Just a gesture. I don't expect you to come back, she said. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry, not because I lost you, but because I lost the person you made me want to be. Her words sank deep. The kind of truth that leaves no sound, just weight. I walked to her bed. Took her hand gently. Her fingers felt cold, fragile. Emily, I said quietly. You don't need to keep saying sorry. You just need to heal. For real this time. She nodded, tears still falling. And then, for the first time in months, we both smiled. Not because everything was okay, but because finally it didn't have to be. When I left the hospital, the sun was setting. The sky was orange and fading into gray. And as I stood there, I realized something I hadn't before. Sometimes closure isn't a door slamming shut. It's just two people standing on opposite sides, finally saying everything they should have said before it broke. 3 days passed after the hospital visit. I didn't go back. Not because I didn't care, but because I'd already said everything that needed to be said. She texted once, just a thank you. No apologies. No explanations. Just gratitude, and somehow, that felt right. Life started moving again. Slowly, cautiously, like walking on ice that might still crack. I checked out of the motel, moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. It wasn't much, but it was mine. A quiet space where every corner didn't whisper her name. One morning, a small brown envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address. Just my name, Ben. Her handwriting. For a moment, I just stood there. The world around me went quiet, even the hum of passing cars faded. It felt like the air itself was holding its breath. I brought it inside, sat at the kitchen counter, and just stared at it. Half of me didn't want to open it. Because every time she reached out, it felt like reopening a wound I'd only just started to heal. But curiosity, it has its own gravity. So I opened it. Inside was a single folded page. And a photograph. The photo stopped me. It was from our 3rd anniversary, a beach trip in Santa Monica. We were both laughing, faces tanned from the sun, wind in our hair. She'd written something on the back in blue ink. You said this was the happiest day of our lives. You were right. I just didn't realize then that happiness needs protecting. I turned the photo over and unfolded the letter. It wasn't long. Her words were simple, stripped of all defense. Ben, I wanted to tell you this in person, but I knew I wouldn't have the strength. I'm leaving the city for a while. I need to start over, not with someone else, but with myself. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope someday, when you think of me, it won't be with anger. It will just be a memory, something that once was real and beautiful, before we broke it. Thank you for loving me when I didn't love myself. You showed me what real meant. I'll carry that forever. Goodbye. Emily. I sat there for a long time, just holding that letter. No tears this time. Just quiet understanding. People talk about closure like it's a door that finally shuts. But sometimes, it's a window left open, letting the past drift out on its own. I placed the photo back in the envelope and tucked it inside a drawer. Not to keep it, but to know where it was, in case I ever needed to remember how far I'd come. That evening, I walked to the park, the same one where I'd gone the night I left her. The air was cooler now, the trees bare, the sky painted gray. And as I sat on that same bench, I realized the pain was gone. Not forgotten, just transformed. Grief had turned into gratitude. anger into acceptance, and love into something quieter, purer. A lesson I hadn't wanted, but maybe needed. I looked out at the water and whispered, "Goodbye, Em." No bitterness. No weight. Just peace. And for the first time, I felt it. Not the absence of her, but the presence of myself again. A few weeks passed after the letter. The days began to feel lighter, not happier, exactly. Just less heavy. I started running in the mornings again. Same old sneakers, same park, same route. But this time, it didn't feel like I was running from something. I was running towards something. Maybe peace. Maybe myself. One morning, I stopped by the lake, the one where Emily and I used to sit during our better days. The air was cold enough to sting, and the wind carried that soft hum you only hear when the world's still half asleep. I closed my eyes, and for a moment, it almost felt like she was there. Not in the haunting way she used to be. Not in guilt or regret, but in memory. Gentle, distant, human. It's strange how love changes after it's gone. At first, it's fire, uncontrollable, painful, wild. Then it turns into ash, heavy, suffocating. But if you let it, it becomes something lighter. Like smoke. Rising quietly, disappearing into the sky. That morning, I whispered into the wind. Not for her to hear, but for myself. "I forgive you, Emily. And I hope, wherever you are, you found what you were looking for." A gust of wind brushed across my face, cold, but calm. And maybe it was just the weather, but it felt like something whispered back. Not words. Just warmth. Closure. I walked back toward the parking lot. The world waking up around me. Cars, birds, distant laughter. Everything ordinary again. And for once, I didn't mind ordinary. Because ordinary meant alive. It meant healing. Later that night, I sat by the window in my apartment. City lights blinked in the distance. Tiny reminders that life goes on. Even after heartbreak. Even after endings. I took out the letter one last time. Read her words again. And this time, instead of pain, I smiled. I folded it carefully. Placed it back in the envelope. And tucked it inside a small wooden box. Not as a memory of what I lost, but as a reminder of what I survived. Because sometimes, the greatest love stories don't end with a reunion. They end with peace. And in that peace, you finally find yourself again. This is how it ends. Not with another heartbreak. Not with revenge. But with understanding. With silence. And the kind that doesn't hurt anymore. If stories like this speak to you, about love, betrayal, and the things we never say out loud, then subscribe to Secrets and Silence. Because here, secrets speak louder than words.